Hello, everybody. I'm Kyle Chambers, and I'm here with Alex Dingmann of Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff. Thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me, man. It's going to be a fun time. I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. It's great to have you on the podcast. I'm really excited to talk about your show. That's really gained a lot of traction throughout the sport karate community, and it's great to have podcasts that gain traction to talk about great sport karate content as well.
I mean, I feel the same thing. You know, when I find out about other sport karate podcasts or anything martial arts, I'm into it just the same. So whatever one's out there, I just soak it up.
That's great. Jackson Rudolph does a great one. He's actually worked for Black Belt Magazine in his transition to medical school, doing different magazine articles and doing different podcast episodes and video film study. He's really taken sport karate to the next level as well. So
yep, totally agree.
So it's gonna be great to talk about your career as well. So you did karate from 1992 to 2019 with the Diamond Nationals in 2019 being your last tournament. How do you feel you did it in point sparring and in forms? How do you feel sport karate's evolved over several years?
Was definitely taking a lot of different like turns. You know, there's a lot of different cultures there. So like even when you mentioned like I started martial arts in 1992, so and in the early 90s, it definitely had a very different look than it did from the early 2000s, even into the 2010s into now. Like it just keeps changing, and you'll keep changing too as long as you're still in it to a degree. So, I mean, I don't foresee a time where I'll ever just not be around it and involved with it. Yeah, now with Inside Scoop, shit. That's me. You know what my goal is? I'm gonna tell you this right now, and I mentioned it on Inside Scoop. My goal is that Inside Scoop's gonna get so freaking awesome that is how I'm gonna get into the Black Belt Hall of Fame. That's what I'm talking about, because I'll tell you right now. For point fighting, that's didn't do enough, man. Didn't do enough point fighting, so couldn't. But that's okay. I'm all right with it. I accept where I was at.
That's awesome. I hope that your show does get in the Black Belt Hall of Fame one day. You guys do a lot of great content, and there's a lot of great people that are in the sport karate community that listen to your podcast. Actually, from the sounds of it, from the comments they put, take time out of the day to listen to the podcast. So Jackson Rudolph will mention the stuff you guys say on your podcast and his podcast. And I know Andrew Cablan, he's from Ontario, Canada. He listens to the podcast. And there's several others that will listen to the podcast and really enjoy it, and that's awesome as well. So maybe explain how it got started and why you and Jeff wanted to start the podcast, and how the Martial Arts Internetwork got involved, which is the one that the podcast is on, the page of podcast is on.
Right. Well, so here's kind of, because those are good questions. So here's kind of how it got going for me with Martial Arts Internetwork. Because even before Travis reached out to Jeff and I about doing the pod together, Travis had reached out to myself and Mark Quinn McDonald. So Mark Quinn McDonald, super cool guy. I love that dude. He is Chicago. Now this is different. I live in Elgin, which is, I don't know, like 25 miles away from Chicago, but people don't say things as far as distance here, like how far away you are. They see things as far as time. So like I could be 25 miles away from Chicago. You still might be an hour and a half to 2 hours away, just with traffic. Anyway, point is, like Mark Quinn he's a guy from Tankston Academy in Chicago. Super cool guy. Love him. He's always, if people don't know about Mark Quinn, go check him out. He's always got an opinion out there. I love talking to the guy. So that was what Travis was first talking about. He goes, hey, I think you guys would be super cool to do a pod together. And we were like, all right, yeah, it's cool. But we never really got around to making it happen. And then later on, after Travis has started CTE, Jeff and I just organically just really started commenting on it. And then he said, hey, what if you two did something? And then it just took off. So, and Jeff's a super cool guy. And I might be one of the only people to make him angry enough to yell at someone multiple times, because I don't think I've ever like really seen or heard him yell at someone. but he tells me to shut up multiple times. So maybe I'm just the guy to push buttons a little bit.
He's been on a couple of my podcast episodes, and I also have my own, similar to the virtual forums tour. I've done a couple of virtual events. I have one coming up on June 12th as well. I'm not going to announce it yet, but keep your eyes open for that. And he's been a broadcaster on a couple of those events as well. He's been an awesome guy to work with, and he really, somebody who soaks in everything he hears and really has a love for the sport martial arts as well, which is an awesome thing to have a guy like that who helps me out a lot, and I appreciate it.
Jeff doesn't forget anything. I think, and I do know a lot of things, and I think I know almost everything, but I don't. Doesn't shake my confidence. I still think I know. But anyway, Jeff will just be like, "No, you're wrong," and he'll just say it. Like it just comes right out on the show. That happens all the time. But you started talking about something. You mentioned something. You were like, what is competition, been like as it changed? So here's where I think I can recognize with the common competitor pretty easily. If you take a step back and you go, who is Alex Dingman? What is Alex Dingman? And you just look at me and go, okay, there's that. Well, let's just look at that. So a lot of people may not know that I did forms at a pretty high level for a number of years. At a high level, I'd probably say 5 or 6 years. All right. And that was like, and I'm talking like, I'll say open, but it was like extreme, creative, musical, even traditional. Right. Like I did that at a high level. I even mixed some weapons in there as well. So where I did that, but then I'm probably one of the tallest people who would ever do like extreme forms. Right. So 5'11", there wasn't a lot of great guys that did it. Like at my time, there was guys like Steve Torada who were like barely breaking 5'5", I'm 6 inches taller than the guy, and easily got 50 pounds, now more, than everybody else in the divisions. It was a little bit different. I was the one who was the oddball. It was like me and Kim Do. It was like nobody else was as tall as we were. But and I just loved fighting. So you look at that. So you look at a guy who was just, all right, pretty good at forms, which I loved. All right. And it also fought pretty well. But even you look at that, like, all right, here's how I could recognize with a lot of guys, like the common competitor. So, all right, Kyle, let's just say it like this. If you were to just take like your stereotypical point fighter, what would that look like?
I don't know a lot about point fighting, but I have watched a lot of video on it over the last few months I've been on the podcast.
I can help you. Here's your stereotypical point fighter in like my time frame, right? This person fights right side in front. Check. That's me. This person is predominantly going to pick their front foot up every time they move. Check. This person is not left-handed. Check. Right. And yeah, and his fights very, very long and linear. Check. So another problem with that is, I don't know, it's not necessarily a problem. It's just reality. I grew up with a group of people. A lot of people know them, but none of us had a coach. There was no coach, so there wasn't like we just had to figure crap out, right? And not just on the fighting end, but on the forms end too. So like Jeff and I had Mike Welch on the show with Marcel Jones and Lauren Carney. And Lauren had a very good coach, probably one of the best ever, in Casey Marks. Well, I was asking Mike because I knew what his answer was going to be. I was like, who was your coach, Mike? And he was honest. He's like, there is no coach. You just had to figure stuff out. I knew he was going to say that because that was the same for me. There was no coach. Like the coaches we had just surpassed, or they just weren't around. And so you just had to figure crap out. It was the same type of thing for fighting as well. So I'm going to name off some names. And it was just a group of guys fighting each other and starting to figure stuff out. We didn't know anything about angles. Nobody told us anything. We didn't know any of that. We just kind of we just would watch videos and get hit with stuff and see like, oh, that's what a blitz is. Nobody taught us what that crap was. Nobody taught us any of this stuff. We just figured stuff out physically and then just went out and hit people. So a guy like Hamid Feruzzi, BJ Carnahan, Greg Betlock, Elias Lemon, Jamie Cravens, Joe Boone, Troy Sexton. Right? These are all guys that I fought with in Minnesota. There's way more. There's so many more, right? And very, very good ones. Ashley Ferruzzi, all right? You just name it. There's tons of them. We didn't have any coaches. We were just a group of people around the same age that just fought each other 3 to 4 times a week. And occasionally we'd figure some stuff out. That's literally how it went down. So, but of those guys, there was a time where I had the, like the FU mentality where I said, I will be the best person in this room. I will beat everybody. And I would talk. Do you think I'm talking now? Just when I would train, I would trash talk all the time. And Greg Betlock was the one who I could push his buttons more than anybody else. If anybody thinks I push Jeff Doss's buttons, I should have Greg on the show sometime to find out just how many buttons I pushed with Greg. I could get Greg to kick a wall, which I did at one point. And then, yeah, we just have fun, man. We would just do all sorts of weird stuff because that's all it was for us. Because while we wanted to be great, we had no concept of how to do that. We were just a bunch of guys in our early 20s just figuring some stuff out, having fun doing karate. Oh, by the way, we happened to beat some people up in the process. That's all it was for us. We didn't really have a grasp for it. Probably the most disciplined out of all of us was Greg. And the reason why was because he blames me for this all the time. So people don't know this about him. Greg Betlock, his senior year in high school, was like the number 2 running back in the state of Minnesota, right? And now Greg wasn't going to put all of his eggs into one basket into football, all right? Now he was like stupid fast, right? He's a running back, and he was also good. 2 state titles, he was ready. Bunch of teams, the college teams, D1 teams, gave him scholarships, but he cracked his ankle his senior year, and then they just started pulling scholarships. But Greg he's no Dumbo. He went to the University of Minnesota, Carlson School of Business. That's what his plan was. All right. So he walks on to the Minnesota Gophers, the D1 football team. And he had the second fastest 40-yard dash time on the team. And they had pro running backs that were in front of him, and like Lawrence Maroney, Marion Barber, and they had pro talent on the offensive line. And I talked to him one time. I'm like, hey, man, you want to do this local tournament? They're doing like team fighting. You want to do it together? And he's like, let's do it. Now, at the time, Greg was weighing like 215 pounds, right? But when he would fight, he would typically fight in like the 180s, right? Or less. So that's how much more weight he was carrying than when he would typically fight. He was a meathead, right? So Greg was probably the best trained, because what we would do is Greg didn't have fun doing football anymore. He was done with it. Football had beat him up. And he said, I'm just tired of being a blocking dummy. They're not going to give me any playing time. I'm not going to the NFL. They're going to the NFL. This is Marion frickin' Barber, right? So Greg's like, I'll just take all the training I was doing for football and I'll put that into karate. I was like, all right, sounds good to me. But only there was still no one to really train us. Greg, we were just figuring stuff out. So we had fun doing it. Mainly, well, I had fun doing it because I made fun of him often. But yeah, that's kind of how that started. And that was probably the early 2000s. I really decided that, like, all right, I'm going to make this a thing. And I'm going to really see if I'm any good in 2000. And I had done a couple national tournaments here and there, the Bluegrass Nationals, definitely the Diamonds all the time. I'd gone to the AKA Grand Nationals. It was called the AKA Grand Nationals at the time. I'd done that a number of times, but I thought, all right, I'm 18. Let's go try this. Let's try this traveling thing. Let's go to some NASCAR tournaments and see what it's like. Yeah, and then I never stopped, because as we all find out, it's awesome.
It's awesome you're able to do that. Over the past, I did WKF tournaments for about 4.5 years, and I competed at 3 WKF Karate Canada
Okay.
national tournaments and I won a national championship in 2019 in the disability division and the para division. And then I was able to go to several WKF events with my team, the Chitani Wallakai Karate Federation, in my own style. They have their own team, so I did that for 3.5 years. But over COVID, I've really started to learn more about the sport karate side of it. And my coaches, Mary Amato and Rose Rayam, have helped me along a little bit with some of the rules and stuff. But over the podcast, I've learned more and more about sport karate. And I've been kind of finding my own way into sport karate. And I hope eventually when COVID's over and after I'm finished my school, I hope eventually go to the AK Warrior Cup and some of these great tournaments to meet some of these great people as well. So it's been great over COVID to compete in some of these virtual tournaments over the pandemic and be able to meet some of these people virtually, to hopefully meet them in person one day.
I think you're gonna have a lot of fun with it. How did you? What got you interested in sport karate tournaments?
Just over COVID, I didn't have anywhere to go to tournaments or do anything, and I heard about sportmartialarts.com, and I was like, that's pretty cool. So let's do that. So I started doing a couple tournaments, and then I heard about Eventex first. Actually, it was the Eventex Cup with Jacob Wolfman. He did a tournament, and I heard about Eventex, and then started in Eventex. Then I heard about sportmartialarts.com and did a few of those tournaments. Like, this is pretty cool. Eventually, I started doing more and more tournaments. I actually got into the sport side of it with podcasts. I interviewed Mary Amato. I interviewed Rose Rayam. I interviewed Jackson Rudolph a few times. I've interviewed several martial arts athletes. I interviewed Sammy Smith.
I've been checking them out. I've been seeing them. Yeah, you've got all the heavy hitters, man.
Yeah, thanks. And I've had a lot of great people as well. I've had Solange Olivier on the podcast. I've had Gabriel Dunn has come on to do a couple things with me. I've had Jeff Doss on, and I've had Jesse King on, or Jesse Ray, and I've had Julia Plocker on, and the list goes on and on of great martial arts athletes. And the sport martial arts community has really accepted me into the community, and I'm able to do a lot with my podcast through that. And then eventually, as I got more and more interested in it, I started doing these matchups, these virtual matchups similar to a boxing match. So I'd have these 1v1 matchups. I started doing that just for free, and they weren't really great quality, but I started working on them. And then Eventex said, we have this platform for you to, if you want to do this. I'm like, okay. So we reached a deal. So we reached deals so I could have my event on their platform, and I'm hoping to I will have another event on June 12th with their platform. And I've had 2 events. I had the Junior Kata Showcase back in February, then the traditional Kata Showcase, which you heard about that on your podcast episode 88 of the Anti-Scoop with Alex and Jeff. And it was 8 competitors in total with 1v1 matchups. So it'd be 2 at a time and the best 2 out of 3 rounds. So I'm going to have another one similar to that on June 12th. It's going to be more forms and weapons based in the creative side of it. But I got into the promotional side of it because I got really excited about sport karate and wanted to promote it more. And the more I've been able to promote it, the more I've gotten excited into the creative side of it. So for Christmas, my dad actually bought me a black gi. So I've started getting to the creative side of it. Mario Model helped me a lot with the creative side. I've kind of found my own way that way. And I can transfer my traditional karate into the creative side. And I've also taken my Shindo, which is behind me. It's very similar to a bow staff, like a heavier version of a bow staff. And I would take my bow staff and make it into a creative form while still keeping the traditional side of karate alive within a creative form. So taking my traditional roots and making it creative, and that's been a lot of fun as well. So I got into that.
That's what it's all about right there. That's what it's all about, man. Because you take it, and here's what it is, Kyle. We have a love for martial arts. Jeff and I were talking about this. It was either last week or the week before. With their love for martial arts. And you know what, people who love martial arts, you know what they do? More martial arts. We've all tried a bunch of different stuff, right? I had a buddy of mine, right? He was a Muay Thai fighter, okay? So I'm like, all right, man, let me try this. Do you know what Muay Thai fighters do so that they don't, because they're going to smash stuff with their shins, which hurts a normal person. You know what they do to make sure that doesn't hurt them? They deaden their nerves by smashing themselves in the shin. So this dude, oh gosh, what was it? Abraham. He comes up, he's got this pipe. Kid you not, he got a lead pipe. And we're just smashing each other in the shins. This is what we do. But for some reason, we thought it was fun because it was a new type of martial art. I didn't do it again after that, by the way. That was the only time I did that because that sucked, right? But that's just what we do. So we have fun with this. If you really kind of go back again, why did we even get involved in martial arts? Okay, why? Because if you think about it, really think about this. Jeff and I, let's just take Jeff and I, because we know it's from the Inside Scoop. We're very good friends, okay? We kind of, and if it wasn't for martial arts, there would be no reason for us to be friends. I mean, no reason. How would I ever know him, right? We're not really that similar if you think about it, but we're very, very good friends. And that's what it does. It kind of helps us come together. So this is something that a lot of people won't know about me, is that because I got involved in martial arts when I was almost 11 years old, okay? 11 years old. So I get involved in martial arts. My brother was 5, almost 6. That's what it was, okay? Something like that. No, 7, right? So, and I had a stutter that was super hard, right? Like I stammered a lot and people would make fun because that's what kids do. And you know what? So someone who didn't know that that's what was going to happen, it's funny to them at first, all right? So you get that because you don't know what that person's feeling. So you know what people who stutter all the time, you know what they do? They stop talking. So now they stop talking to other people because they don't want to stutter. Now they're nervous about the fact that they're going to stutter. So now they've now become antisocial because it's safer for them to do that because they don't want to be outcasted because of who they are and what and how they talk. So now they don't talk. So now that you're not talking, you don't have friends with people you can't talk to. Even if people who didn't mind it, you're not friends with them because you're not communicating with them. So now you've secluded yourself. But in martial arts, none of that mattered. You can't talk in class anyway, right? All that matters is, instructor says, do a hook kick. Looks like this, all right? And how are the details he goes through it? This is a hook kick. You do the hook kick. He says, well, it's a great job. And you didn't have to be anybody. You didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to wear any kind of cool clothes because we're all wearing the same uniform anyway. No, you were 100% accepted just because you came through the door. And we're all doing the same thing together. We're all a part of the same group. You are accepted. You are one of us. And a person, and I'm not the only one. Everybody feels like this to some degree. You feel like, oh my gosh, this is a family I could get around. So that's why we started. But competition's not that different. When we start competing, our eyes open up and we're like, whoa, kind of like what you were just talking about when it came to sport martial arts. You're like, I didn't even know this place existed, right? Now, all of a sudden, we're looking around because we're pretty good at that point, right? Now we're pretty good at martial arts. Now we're competing and we're looking around like, oh, this is what's up. I didn't know you could do this in martial arts. First time I ever saw a musical form, I thought I was in the Twilight Zone. I was like, no, I didn't know you could do this stuff, right? I'm watching people do to like rock and roll music. People are jumping up in the air, flying and kicking. I'd never seen a triple kick before. I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then all of a sudden I was like, I had a new goal. Like, I want to do that too. And I would like do stuff, when I was like 10, 11. I thought I was doing that, but I wasn't. And you just kind of make some stuff up. And man, my brother and I we had guys that we looked up to all the time. Like for fighting, I'll never forget. I looked up to Richard Plowden big time because he was the first person I saw win the Diamond Ring. And that was the biggest tournament we'd ever seen before because it was in our town. And then I would watch guys like, I remember Dave McComber. All right, Dave McComber. He had this thing where he would like chop and then do a kick and he would bring his hand in like a fighting hand, so it'd be a knife hand. But he had this sneaky little way. I was like, all right, this is cool. He would go 1, 2, 3. And then he would bring his hand in and do a kick. And I'm like, that was so cool. He was just doing creative things I never thought it was possible. Someone kicking around in a circle, right? I was like, wow, you can do this stuff? All right, that's a new goal. Now you're in competition. And then for some reason, we're more friendly with people that we want to smash them in the face, right? It's so weird. It's weird when you think about it. We're like, hey, what are you doing today? Like, I was gonna go training. Really? Training? What are you gonna do? Oh, and if you said what it is you actually did, you would say, yeah, there's some buddies of mine. We're gonna go to this this training facility, like this warehouse. We're gonna go over there and we're gonna kick each other in the face. Like, what? They're like, yeah, well, I mean, I'm gonna punch him in the chest too, and I'm probably gonna hit him pretty hard. But we're gonna do that, and we'll probably make fun of each other a little bit, and then we'll go home. If you actually said that, people would think you're nuts. But in reality, it's kind of what we do. All right. And then what you do for fun after you're done doing that, you meet up with a bunch of other people who do that. And we all do this in a big hotel. Like, that's what you do? Yes. And it's awesome. Right. It sounds funny when you say it out loud like that, but it's the truth.
I have a lot of memories. I went to Las Vegas for 3 years over Easter, and I go to Las Vegas, and we train in these ballrooms with the carpet, and your feet be burned from the carpet. But you go out and you train and you get ready, and then you go into the mat, you do your competition, and there's something about the way you said it, but it's the love for the competition that can't be replaced. The heart and the soul you put into the competition and the training and everything to get to a certain point. It's one of the great things that any athlete at any point can attest to, is the love for the sport, and getting up there, even if it's virtually, and doing something is really a great thing.
Now, you said it right on. That's exactly it. So, I mean, if you think about it, I had really not a lot of them, but why would I want to go to Louisville, Kentucky? Who cares about going to Louisville, Kentucky? Right?
Except for basketball or football, but that's besides the point.
Right. Right. But we were like, no, man, it's the Bluegrass Nationals, man. We're going to Louisville, Kentucky. Like, all right, I guess. Right. Or someone's like, yeah, we're going to Reston, Virginia. Like, where the frick is that? Right? Virginia. Like, dude, that's where the Charlie Lee Nationals or the World Series of Martial Arts, that's what that is. Now, World Series of Martial Arts is a really cool name. That's cool. Right. But in reality, it's the same hotel. It's the same little ballroom. Doesn't matter whether you're there, you're in Pomona, California, which unless you live out there or you've competed in the early 2000s, late 90s, at the Compete Nationals, you wouldn't even know where that place is. You know what I'm saying? But we don't care. It doesn't matter where it is. You just pick and pop. It kind of didn't matter. You could put us in Bismarck, North Dakota. We would have gone. That's where everybody was at. That's where we were going to go. I had zero ambition. This is a true story. I had zero ambition to go to the Irish Open before I went my first time. And this is literally what I said. Now, if I could help it, I would go every time. And I was and people are like, Alex, you got to go, man. You don't understand. You don't know what it's like until you go. And I'm like, well, I really don't care to know what it's like. And they're like, you don't get it, man. And I said, listen. Who's the best fighter in the world? And we all said it at the same time. It's Raymond frickin' Daniels, which I have a little bone to pick. Why did he have to be my same age, basically the same weight for the most part? All right, my entire damn career. The greatest point fighter ever is like, I can't get a break. That's okay. I got to fight him. We got to become friends. So that's cool. We all say it's Raymond Daniels. All right, well, who's number two? Maybe at that time, I'm asking the question, probably Ross Levine. All right. All right. Well, who's next? You might say Jason Borrelli. You might say Trevor Nash. You might say maybe Hamid Feruzzi at that point. So you go down the list. You probably get 5, 6, maybe Jack Belton, people deep. All right. Okay. Then maybe who's next? You might say a Canadian. So we're saying all these people. And I said, you know what all these people have in common? I don't have to go to Ireland to fight them. What are we talking about? So then somebody said it to me like this, and they go, listen, it's the largest fighting tournament in the world. Are you really going to say you could have went and you never went? I said, all right, that's a good point. That's a good point. So I go there, and what I really experienced was it didn't freaking matter, right? It was the culture. So this is where America has really gotten almost to the point where it's too far gone, right? Is nobody, people care. I shouldn't say that. But people don't want the trophy in competition in Europe. It might be more than just Europe. It's probably just everybody outside of the States. But In the States, it's all they're your trophy hunt. Got a trophy, gotta get the trophy, you gotta get the trophy. All right. But in Europe, they don't care about that. It's the experience. It's kind of like what you were talking about, Kyle. It's the love of the competition, right? That's why we all started. And then we pollute the minds of the martial artist to feel like it's not about the love of martial arts. It's not about the love of competition. It's because you want to get that trophy. That wasn't really it. But they pollute your mind to making you believe that is what you wanted. You didn't want that. But now it's so subconscious that the people even polluting your mind, they don't even know they're doing that. They don't know that that's what they're all about. They'll say it's all about the love of competition, but then all they do is just do things that are about getting a trophy. You know what I'm saying? But over there, it is about the love of competition. Some of them are really cheap in how they do it, especially the Italians. And I'm Italian, right? So if I'm saying that, that's saying something, right? But I really respect that a lot. So I looked at that and I looked at the culture of it and I'm like, all right, I'll be back here each year if I can. If I can help it, that's where I'll be. And it's great. It's deep over there as far as the amount of people. So that's where I know that was a really long-winded rant. My bad, man.
It's all good. In 2017, I went to the Irish Open. It wasn't the Walk Irish Open. It was one in WKF back in September 2017. I went with my team I was on at the time, the Shintani Waterkai Karate Federation team, and it was great to go over there and experience that. And I competed in one division, but I ended up getting bronze. I ended up competing against in 4 different rounds. I ended up winning in 4 rounds and then getting bronze because I lost to the gold medal guy. But it was great to have, or the bronze medal match. I think I won the bronze medal match, but it was great to have that experience to go over to Ireland and travel and be with the team and meet new people. And it was great to have that experience of going over to Ireland and doing that. It's something I'll remember for the rest of my life. So it's not as big as the Waco Irish Open, which I hope to go to one day, but it was great to go over to Ireland. And the people over in Ireland, I found, are very authentic, and they're really authentic in the way they do things. Even in Canada, it's very Americanized, if you know what I mean. Like, the Canada's really influenced by America, but you could tell over in Ireland. I actually got the chance to train with a club over in Ireland that our team trained with, and they were so happy to have us over there training with them, and they had so much fun learning from us, and we learned from them, and it was just a great time, and they're so genuine over there. And I find here in Canada, in North America, even I've been to the States a few times, and not just for karate, but for other things as well. But it's all about, the trophy, the end result. But really, sometimes it is about the love of the sport, whatever you do, whether it's football or whatever. And I can tell in Ireland and even some different parts of the provinces are version of states, like it's the Canadian states basically. In our
for sure.
In the northern part of Ontario, where I'm from the southern part, but in the northern part, it's really the love for the sport and the love for the people around you, and they really do value that, which I think is great to have and to be able to see that. I've been lucky to see that with a lot of different people that I've gone to their tournaments and they've invited me and took me in and gave me a place to stay, and doing all that has been great as well.
That's pretty cool, man. I mean, like I said, I love it too. I would go back each time I can. So, but you know what's, you probably didn't know this about me because a lot of people wouldn't, right? I'll tell you a little bit about Alex Dingmann, the competitor, because really it doesn't matter anymore, right? So for the people who actually see me compete live, they would know a little bit about me. So, but to give you the Cliff Notes version of who was Alex Dingmann when he was competing, an above average talent competitor with above average talent competitor to very, not, I won't say elite because that would not be accurate. That would be disingenuous. But who also underperformed to his talent level. If I'm being honest, that was truth, right? So I think about the guys that I competed against, I fought with. There's really been like 2 people who have really handily outkicked me. I always thought like, I'll outkick you. You're not going to outkick me. I'm better than you, right? And I would say it like that. All right. The greatest kicker ever is Jason freaking Borelli. He's the best. A lot of people say Pedro Xavier. I obviously didn't fight Pedro Xavier, right? But I've been around. I was there. I watched Pedro do what Pedro does. Jason just does things that shouldn't work. Jason is 5'7", 5'8", but fights like he's tall, like he's 6 feet. When you're like, I know simple math. You shouldn't be able to do this, right? I'm taller than you. We both extend. I'm gonna beat you, but I don't know. This guy's got go-go gadget hips or something because he beat me, right? So many times. My last fight ever was against Jason Borelli that I swore I was gonna win. I have been shut out, like destroyed by Jason, and I've gone into overtime matches against Jason, just like that one, right? Jason was one of them, obviously, because I mentioned he shut me out a few times. And then there's an obscure one, also Canadian though, Tom Roberts, right? In 2017, I fought Tom Roberts at the WKC World Championships. And I'm like, I know how Tom fights. I see how he goes. I'm not that worried. Tom is a strange fighter because Tom does everything that you would tell a student, don't ever do this. And he does it and he wins. And you just look and you go, well, what the hell do I do about that? Because Tom fights flat on it, just come 100% flat, right? So for fighters, you'd never do that, right? Tom is basically in a refusal to put his hands up. He just has his hands down. He just literally just standing in a ring. He's just standing there. So you're like, well, and the fighter looks at this and is very confused because they're like, well, you're not actually doing anything. You're just kind of standing there sideways. So when you go to do something, all of a sudden Tom chambers his leg and it goes above your head. Now you got to run and bail because it's the last thing you expected to happen. You're like, oh, okay. And then just out of nowhere, he'll come pumping right at you full speed. I had to bail. I had to stop kicking against Tom in that fight. And we went into overtime and the homeboy kicked me in the head. Can't even believe you, Tom. Congratulations. Way to go. He won the gold that day too. What are you going to do? Right? So I always thought like, I'm going to beat, ain't nobody going to outkick me. I'll beat these guys. This is what I'm going to do. The only people that outkick me in competition have been those guys. Someone like Zolt Murati didn't outkick me. No way. Right? But, you know, I had a lot of almost, too many almost. But we also make sacrifices. We make sacrifices a lot. And some people may prioritize one sacrifice over another. And I went a little bit of a different route. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So I remember when my wife and I were dating, she didn't get what it took to be great or even really good at martial arts competition, all right? But I had to look at this and go, I love her. I love martial arts, but I am going to sacrifice this right now because I'm looking at that point, my girlfriend and fiance, and I'm like, this relationship I have with her means so much to me that I will be willing to sacrifice this workout. And she knew that. And like, she knew that this is what I'm doing. So if I sacrifice that, she knew what that would mean for her. Like, you're willing to do that for me? Yes, I was. And I would do that every now and then just because of how much she meant to me. She meant that to me like martial arts meant that to me, right? So I made sacrifices, but I made them in the other direction. Whereas some people might look at that and say, you didn't make enough sacrifices. And I'll actually say the opposite and say, I did make sacrifices. And I believe I made the correct ones because I'm willing, I can look at the decisions I've made and be totally okay with that, right? Just like when I had kids, right? I knew that once I start doing that, there's a high likelihood my competition career might go down or come to a complete stop, which it did. And I am okay with that as well, because that's another sacrifice that I made, because there's different things that are there. What are you going to do? I made sacrifices like that early on in my career when I was doing martial arts as a profession. And I would say it was probably 2007, 8, and 9. I didn't really know how to really run karate schools great yet. And I knew how to be good at martial arts, but if this was going to be what I was going to do as a profession, I was going to have to be great. And Greg was always pissed at me because I would skip workouts every now and then because I wanted to build up my school so I could focus on that. And he was like, "You're not sacrificing." And I'm like, "I kind of am sacrificing." But he didn't get it, right? And now as you take a step back and you look at it and you go, was it worth it? I think it is. I'm okay with the decisions that I made and the sacrifices I made, but I made other sacrifices where some people might say, "No, you didn't." But I actually am totally okay with the ones that I made.
That's good. That was great. You're able to do that and have the life you have now through martial arts as well, and that was great as well. So yeah, that was awesome.
So I got a question for you, Kyle. So you're just learning about the sport martial arts whole world, and you've been interviewing some really good competitors. And I would say you really started getting into it when COVID hit, and I'm actually super impressed because you don't just know like what it is, like you've talked to like the best names in sport martial arts. I'm floored almost. Like, you'd be kidding me. For me to do that when I first learned about sport martial arts, there's no chance. There was no way. There was no way I would have been able to do that. Who's your favorite fighter? I'm curious about this. Who's your favorite fighter?
It's okay if I use WKF Kumite as well. I'm gonna add WKF Kumite in there as well.
So I probably won't know him if you do.
Okay. That's a tough one. I have had the chance to interview Jesse King, but my favorite fighter of all time was Ethan Small. He's from Canada. He's the first able-bodied junior world champion for the WKF and Kumite. He's my most favorite fighter of all time. So.
All right. Well, all right. If you're putting it like that, I'm gonna have to watch this guy.
Yeah, Ethan Small, look him up on YouTube. He's from Toronto. He's a great kid.
All right. Who's your favorite weapons competitor?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to say weapons competitor to watch.
Jackson Rudolph. Watch. Definitely to watch.
Off YouTube, Jackson Rudolph, without question.
I kind of thought you might say that. It's probably mine too, to be honest with you. All right. What about an extreme form competitor?
I don't know much about extreme forms, but I've watched a lot of film from Matt Emig, and that guy's insane, next level world.
Dude, you're knocking it out of the park. Matt Emig is probably the best. Yeah. So yeah, you're right on with it, man. Look at that.
Let's go into female forms let's go into female creative forms. Let's go top 3 female creative forms. Let's run into it. Mackenzie Emery is my number 1. Number 2, Sammy Smith. Number 3, Mary Amato. Mary Amato is a good friend of mine, and she's helped me in other ways, like personally and all that. But if we're just talking top 3 forms competitors creative, that would be my top 3. And then we'll go into traditional kata. There's so many great traditional kata competitors out there. I think in the sport martial arts world, I think Rose Ram is definitely on top. Have you ever seen Rose Ram compete? She's awesome. You see Gabriel Dunn, she's awesome. Zoe Brown's awesome. Marissa Meandro's awesome. I really like the intensity that Mary Amato brings to all of her competitions, and in creative, it serves her well because she has this killer mentality. I'm gonna go out there and just destroy, like not destroy you, but I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna do the very best I can and put all my energy on the floor in that moment. But as soon as I get off the floor, I'm gonna be great and I'm going to be the nicest person off the floor. I've heard a lot of stories about Mary Amato, how she's so nice off the floor, but on the floor, she's there and she's gonna compete to the highest degree and put all of her heart into it. And that's one thing I admire about Mary Amato. And she is I'm a little bit biased too, because she is a personal friend of mine, but she's one of my favorite competitors of all time because the way she carries herself. I haven't met her in person, but the way she's carried herself and all the different things that I've worked with her as well. So she's got to be on the high end of my list as well. Yeah.
Well, I think that's what's really cool about the sport karate world is we're accessible. We're a group of very accessible that you could reach out to any of them and you could really start to get to know them, pick their brains, and this is how we become friends as well. I mean, this is kind of what you do. And so I think you should do that with a lot of them, even past competitors. You really should get into that, but then you got to start watching them. You got to start picking up tape, a lot of them. So that's how you learn. You learn because you were at the tournament. You learn because you saw the video. You learn because people were talking about this person. People were talking about that person. And that's just kind of how it goes. You watch the teams and you say, oh, what about this team? Who's that guy trained with? Who's on the, you see who's on that new team? And you just kind of start to learn. And then you start to watch, you start to pick stuff up more, and you start to, bump elbows with people and you start to become friends. And then you just train it together. That's what it's all about.
Let's use Jackson Rudolph just as an example. That guy is on another world, even off the floor. I'm as impressed with him as on the floor as far as interviews and everything. Just in his own bubble, as far as karate, from what I know, he's on Team Paul Mitchell. He does that. He travels every weekend before COVID. He's starting to now. He travels every weekend all across the United States. He went to Stanford University, got his degree at the same time, and he's running a karate team with two of his buddies that are in their mid-20s, and it was team competitive edge, and they've been also very, very successful. Yeah. And for him to be able to do that in their mid-20s, to be able to have a great team is phenomenal, and for him to be able to do so much. And I find these people that do sport martial arts are successful in other areas as well. You look at Julia Plocker, she's heavy into the science right now. I did an interview with her last week on my podcast, and it was amazing to hear her story. Even Maria Amato, she's in biology and marine biology, and she's minoring in chemistry, I believe. And she's been phenomenal too. Like, these people that are in martial arts, they're very successful, and then they go in their real life and they're also very successful as well. And there's a big crossover there. So to be able to hear some of these people's stories about how they became great martial artists and then great people has been an honor as well.
For real though, Kyle, I'm gonna tell you this. You know who probably could be the greatest all-around sport martial arts competitor? Is Chris Walker. Chris Walker might be one of the greatest all-around sport martial arts competitors. For real, all right? And Chris has won a lot of traditional, right, Japanese kata championships. Dude's won weapons championships, right? He is a big time fighter, not just point fighting, full contact, grapples. He does it all, right? But the first time I ever met Chris, there was people, because this is what people would do. People would they would get in a circle around tournaments, and then guys would just trick, and I would be around there, but I couldn't trick like these guys. I'll never forget. Butch Marks was telling everybody, because Butch Marks had a level of cool that was beyond everybody else. So Butch was like, "Hey, y'all gotta see this guy. Check him out. Check him out. Hey, do that thing again." And it was just a bunch of guys just standing around watching Chris Walker do a standing back, a full twisting backflip with a flash kick on the end. And we're like, "What?" And it was the 2000 Battle of Atlanta. And he's like, Butch is like, "You got to check this guy out. Check him out. And I'd never seen that before, right? And that was Chris Walker. Chris Walker could still do that, right? He's that good. I think Chris Walker really might be the greatest all-around martial arts competitor. Guy still fights. And where he's at in the Atlanta area, his school is like the school where people go to fight. I want to just go and check it out sometime. I hear stories about the people who show up on Sundays to go train at Chris's school. So he should probably be the next guy you have on. I'm just giving you a plug right here because it's like that. He's been on a lot of teams, but Chris is pretty loyal. He hasn't been on every team. He didn't team jump a lot. Once he was doing the all-star thing, for the most part, he kind of stayed there. I didn't join a lot of teams, but some of them was because they probably didn't want me. But I had a decent amount of people ask, and they were like, "Hey, we can join. You want to come on our team?" And I said no to a few of them because I really felt funny about it, and I was just like, I don't really like you guys that much. But I didn't tell them that. But in my head, I'm like, I don't really like you guys that much. And what's the point of it? And he's like, are we gonna pay my entry fee? Are you gonna pay my hotel? Or some of them were offering to pay a flight. And I thought about it, and I'm like, but I don't really like you guys that much, and I still want to hang out with my friends and do that thing. And that's what made this thing fun for me, was doing that. And at that point, I'm a grown adult, and I'm like, I'm a grown man. Like, I can pay my own bills, I'm like, that's kind of what it is for me. The sponsorship thing didn't make sense to me. So I'm like, you're going to pay for me to do this, so I'll put on your uniform. All right, I get that. But what about these kids? Like, they actually need the sponsorship, right? Because with them, it's like, let's say it's only one kid that's traveling, which, to be honest, is a lot more than just that. Kids have siblings, right? So 2 parents plus 1 kid. So it's not 1 plane ticket, it's 3, right?
Yeah. Minimum 3. And if you have 2 or 3, if you have 2 or 3 kids in the competition, there's triple. And then even if there's 1 child and the family decides to go with them, you still have to pay for the kids that aren't competing's food and everything. And then the kid who's competing, you got to make sure their meals with the protein bars and all the nutrient stuff, all the extra stuff and the extra thing for the competitor and for the kids. So if some of these families have 2 or 3 kids per family,
it's gonna be like $2,000 a tournament. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at like $2,000 a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want to sponsor me?
I never said it in this way, but you think that people would want to join teams because they like the people that are at the top, or they like the people around them. Like, I'd want to think that. Like, I've always said to people that are on a certain team, whatever it is, I'm really glad you're on the team you want to be on. And I try to emphasize that. Like, that's what you want to think, is that people are on teams because they want to be either with the people on the team, or they like the person who's at the top, and they believe in what they're running and what's going on the team, right?
Well, and there is a certain degree of that. So the couple teams I was on, it was exactly because of that. So I remember I was training, and this is a true story. I'm training with this guy, with Ross Cook. Ross Cook, he's just a physical freaking phenom. This guy's gonna come back sometime soon. Everybody pay attention. This guy's training. He's gonna come back. So for everybody who thought Ross Cook is gone, just wait. Ross Cook is gonna come back, and he's gonna terrorize people. Heads up. Anyway, I'm training with Ross, and Ross and I were trying to figure out a way to get Hamid Feruzzi off of Team Alliance and join us as Team NK, so that we could team up and do 3-man team fighting together. We're like, dude, wouldn't that be awesome? We could do it. So we're talking about that. Well, that same afternoon, Mike Conroy calls me and says, hey, I want you to be on the team. Now, Mike already knew I'd probably say yes, because I told him at that time, I was like, I probably wouldn't fight for anybody other than you. Well, then he asked me. So I said, well, coach, you know what I'm gonna say? Because I was calling him coach long before I was on his team. I was always calling him coach because I was just he's the greatest coach. So I said, all right, coach, you know I'm gonna say yes. He goes, all right, well, I had to ask. So all right, so now I'm on the team. So now I'm like, crap, how are we gonna get Ross on the team? Because that was the goal, was to get the 3 of us together. And at that time, the Alliance was kind of like trying to figure out who they are, where are they going, because they just left the Full Circle days. Full Circle's done, all right? So now we're in this like, who's on there? Sam Gagnon, John Curtillo, but maybe John Curtillo was kind of dipping into this DKS thing. So was Dylan Suarez. So it was really kind of Sam Gagnon, Hamid Feruzzi, and now me.
All right, cool. So explain how the virtual fight tour kind of got a sponsorship with your show.
Okay. So yeah, you started to mention really how the virtual fight tour became a partner with Inside Scoop. They're more of a partner, not just with Inside Scoop, but with the Martial Arts Inner Network. You know what? I think it's, we're really, Jeff and I love that Jesse Ray and the virtual fight tour want to become partners with not just Martial Arts Inner Network, but Inside Scoop. And so it just makes us feel good that, people know about us and care enough about what it is that we say, that they're willing to, put, their dollars behind us so that we can help support and promote them as well. So it's a two-way street, and we're really appreciative of that. On the other hand, I love the product of the virtual fight tour from the very first, from VFT1. I basically said, take my money, every single one, because it's perfect. And I started telling this to people. I said, the only problem about being a fan of sport martial arts is having to watch sport martial arts. Nobody knew what I got. They were like, well, don't you love it? I said, yeah. The problem is if I have to watch a tournament, like I'm going to watch it like on a video, I can't look away. You can't look away for a second because it's 1 2-minute round, and sometimes there's spreads, and sometimes people win early. So if all I do is bend down to go pick something up and put something on a shelf, the match could be over, or I could miss something extremely vital in the match. I have no clue what's going on. But with 3 rounds, that's a lot easier. All right, there was a UFC card just this past weekend. All right. And if it was just 1 round for a lot of those, especially like the headliner fight, it would have went completely different. Right. So this is what we have. Now we have spectator capable events here that we can watch and really be a part of. So I love the virtual fight tour. I love what they're doing. Even the forums tour, the virtual forums tour was really cool. So he's got a really good thing going. And I hope what Jesse's doing really kind of sparks a little bit of change into the sport martial arts culture. And I hope what it does is it takes people from just doing the 1 round to where at black belt, now we're doing a minimum 2 rounds, and then for championship fights, I hope it should be 3, right? It would be a really cool thing. I really hope that they do that.
It's great that Jesse's doing so much for the sport. The virtual forms tour was really great to watch. It so many great competitors from all over the world, not just in the sport martial arts world, but also in the WKF world as well. And for me personally, I've been doing a couple of these events, and the last events, the Traditional College Showcase, I would have these 1v1 matchups, and I had 3 prelims and then a main card. And for each of them, I said, okay, best 2 rounds out of 3. So what I'd do is I'd have each competitor go. I'd show the scores, and then a person would win. And then the second round, they'd have to do a different form. So they do their form. And then if it's tied after 2 rounds, so each person wins a round, they go to a 3rd round. So they can choose between one of the 2 forms they've selected. And that's how I do it. Because for someone watching as a fan, if I did 4 different matchups in just 1 round, it'd be so boring because you're just watching a regular competition, a regular division. But now if you have 3 rounds in point fighting or forms, it's now strategy. You have to figure out, the competitors have to figure out, hey, what are we going to do next? Is it going to be what form am I going to do in the 3rd round? And then as a person watching or a consumer, you can watch to see what are they going to do next and how are they going to look from the 3rd round opposed to the 1st round. Are they going to be more tired? Are they going to come out stronger? How is their chaos going to be? How is their stances going to be? What are they going to do against their competitor? All those things come into play, and it makes it more exciting than just having one matchup for a division. Because in my opinion, if you just had 1 matchup for each division, then it would just be boring because it's just a regular division with 2 people in it. But makes it more exciting because in the UFC, even you watch UFC, I don't watch a lot of UFC, but they have different rounds because if everyone just had 1 2-minute round, it'd be boring and no one would want to watch. So even the Mayweather-McGregor fight, you had a solid 10 rounds plus, because people wanted to sit and watch it because they put their money to watch those fights, and that's something that the UFC and boxing have really gotten into, is the fact people want to sit and watch a product. So they want to sit and watch a 2 hour product. I want to sit and do those things because they want to have a show, and that's what the virtual Forms Tour, virtual fight tours try to put on, and what I've tried to put on. I know a lot of people have tried to put on is having a show for the people to watch to enjoy the sport of martial arts.
I think you're right on. Yeah, absolutely. So really, the virtual Forms Tour should really, it should, I mean, I feel really confidently saying that it's going to be around for a long time, but it's not my production. I don't know, but I love it. I hope it sticks around for a long time as well.
It was great. Great to see so many great athletes from all over the place. I never seen Solange Olivier and Sammy Smith go head to head like that before. I think it was Solange Olivier, Sammy Smith, and then Noah Jellison. All those competitors in that women's round were freaking intense, man. Did you watch that matchup? That was crazy.
I was watching. It was great. I was rooting for Noelle because Noelle and I have trained together. And so I had an invested interest. I'm like, go Noelle. And then I just looked and Sammy just killed it. And you're like, so that's why I asked Sammy when she and Jackson were on Inside Scoop with Jeff and I said, Sammy, before you're done, is anybody ever going to beat you? Or are you just going to decide to just be done? Is anybody ever going to beat you? And I don't know if you heard this, but here's what she said. She said, well, if I win a Warrior Cup, I'll retire the next day. I said, what? So she's like, yeah, I've never won a Warrior Cup. And it's because Jackson keeps winning all her Warrior Cups. So, and Jackson was on the show too. So she's like, that's the one thing I've never got. She goes, but if I win a Warrior Cup, I'll retire the next day. So we were starting the hashtag Warrior Cup for Sammy. But then I felt kind of weird about that because then it's like, all right, we want her to win that Warrior Cup that she wants, but then we want her to retire. Not really, but it's kind of weird. Like you want her to get that because you like her and she's a very likable person and she's a phenomenal martial artist. But it's like, yeah, we don't want you to go away, but all right, it's cool. So if you haven't heard that one, go back and check that one out.
Even Solange Olivier, I've interviewed her a couple of times. She's very kind of a very, very nice, and she's kind of a quieter personality. She's a really nice person to talk to, but she kind of, is more quiet in a group. But once you get her out on the mat, she's so intense and so exciting, and she's very humble in the way she does it. So I have a lot of respect for Solange Olivier as well. I've never met Noah Jellison. I've never had the honor of talking to Noah Jellison, but I know people that know Noah Jellison. They see she's awesome as well.
Yeah, she could really do it all, right? If she wanted to, well, she wants to, right? But she really does possess the ability to just win everything. She possesses the ability, that's for certain.
Absolutely. This is going to be a really interesting question for you. What is the most memorable moment of your career, forms or point fighting? Like one that really stood out to you?
All right, there's a couple of different ones for forms. So for the one, when I was competing at my best ability for forms, I never beat Anthony Atkins. Anthony Atkins was one of the first people I ever seen when you would watch a video of Anthony Atkins, like in the finals, the cameraman was always so far back, was always in the back of the room. So that way they never had to change their angle. But Anthony Atkins could jump so high that literally you'd have to see the camera go up and down because he would literally jump out of the frame. And so that's how I'd never seen anybody to that point before. There's been a few guys since, but never before then. So I never beat Anthony. I took second, but I beat David Douglas. David Douglas was like Paul Bunyan. He was like a folklore. Like, no, you can't beat David Douglas. David Douglas is amazing, right? David Douglas is in movies. And literally, when I beat him, we had just, like, Fast and the Furious would just hit, like, the movies, like, the month before that. And so, which David Douglas had a notable part in Fast and the Furious, right? So you're like, homie, I just paid, money to go watch you in a movie. Now I'm competing against you and I beat you. Like, what? This is life? No way, right? But it still didn't matter because Anthony beat me. So that was a memorable moment for me. I think when I competed against here's one, Chris Walker, Pan American Internationals in 2010, I was probably the most nervous I'd ever been for forms, because it actually felt like maybe I could beat Chris. I didn't really think like I wasn't better than Chris, but I'm like, I might be able to beat Chris. I didn't beat Chris. It was unanimous. All the judges thought Chris was better than me, but I felt like maybe I could. I was super nervous. I actually told him that too. But here's one of the most memorable moments for fighting. So I mentioned Greg Betlock and I were really good friends. When we were both fighting for Team NK together, I made sure I wasn't in Greg's weight class. Right? So cool. You don't want to do all that, travel together, and then fight each other second round. It's kind of a punk move. So if you can help it, I fought middleweight. Greg fought light heavyweight. Well, then Greg gets picked up by Paul Mitchell. We're not on the same team anymore, homie. I'm fighting light heavyweight. So for that year, I fought Greg like 2 times. Greg beat me like, the buzzer beater. I was pissed. I'm like, I'm beating you, homie. I'm going to beat you. And I would, like I said, I would trash talk Greg all the time. So I beat Greg at the Bluegrass Nationals. And I'm like, bam, got it. Now, this is Ross Levine's like rookie year. So to that point, Greg, when he would win the light heavyweight division, because he had won it a few times that year, he wouldn't beat Ross. And I wasn't beating Ross either. Ross was beating me. Ross had me by 3 points. And I'm like, shit, I can't stop this guy. Like, I can't even get to him. All right. And I'm just like, there's like seconds left. And I'm like, well, whatever, just go. All right. You're going to get hit. You're going to get hit. And I just blitzed and I got him, which he probably was surprised, because I would just normally just blitz for nothing without a setup or fake. It just wouldn't have been something I would do. So now I'm only down 2, and I could kind of tell both he and Mike Conroy were like, all right, just panic here. Alex could tie this up. I heard Conroy saying, get out of the ring. So I'm chasing him with my foot in the air, and I kind of made it look like I was going to axe kick. I flipped it, went to a round kick, got him in the face, tied it up. Overtime, we both take off. I felt like it probably was a clash, but the judges all gave me the point. So I beat Ross in overtime. Here's why it's memorable. Anyway, heavyweight grand championship, didn't win the whole tournament, but here's why it's memorable. Okay. Because remember, to that point, I hadn't beaten Greg that year in competition. Well, that was the Bluegrass Nationals, in which Greg's dad always drove us down there, made a big deal about it. So now I got to ride back in the car with Greg and his dad and listen to them while they call their mom, Greg's mom, and let them know, no, I didn't win. Alex beat me, and he's in the car with me. Yeah, punk. That's why that was fun for me. It was fun for me. That was a fun thing. But, when you team up with other guys, it's a lot of fun. I would say probably beating the All-Stars with Hamid Feruzzi and Ross Cook was a super memorable one for me. That was a pretty big moment. There's been some not great memorable moments. I think the time when Cass Sigmund sidekicked the bejesus out of my ribs at the Diamond Nationals in 2012, that one sucked. That was a memorable moment that wasn't so great. I didn't love that one. There's been a lot of those things. This is what happens as fighters, You break a nose, whatever. This thing's been broken like 17,000 times. But those are probably some of my favorite ones.
That's awesome. You have so many memorable moments. You're probably the most energetic person I ever had on the podcast. It's awesome.
That is not surprising. I'm a very animated person. I'll tell you this though, Kyle. This is a true story. The week of Mother's Day, Jeff and I were going to try to have our moms on the pod. Well, Jeff's mom had just had a like a surgery. She wasn't feeling too well. So it's like, I better not. I'm thinking I'm going to go to sleep. Well, I was going to have my mom on the pod. Now, my mom is from Sicily, right? Little town outside of Palermo called Catania. All right. My mom makes me look really, really conservative and reserved and soft spoken. My mom is extra, extra, extra. Right. So she was I almost put her on speakerphone while we were on the pod. I gave her the link, told her to come on. She couldn't figure it out. She couldn't figure out copy and paste. She couldn't figure it out. So she's lighting me up. She's calling me while Inside Scoop's going on. It was in the show where Jesse was on. And I tell you, Kyle, I was this close to just putting her on speaker just so everybody could hear and they could know I'm not making her up. Like, she is literally as extra as you could imagine. But it's all good, man.
So, one more question. This will be the final question of the evening. What are you guys going to do for episode 100? Because now you guys are really close to Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff.
No, we should. I don't know. Should I get like a bunch of balloons? I don't know. What should I do? We'll probably have some people on from past episodes. So whatever guests have come on, maybe we'll ask Mike Pombero to come on again. He's seriously one of my favorite guests. So we'll probably have somebody on that we haven't had before, or maybe some of our favorite guests in the past.
Another show on the Marshall Network just celebrated their 100th. What podcast was that?
CTE. They are fantastic. So CTE's the Chris, Travis, and Carlos experience. I'm surprised Chris didn't talk that much about the UFC fight card. I thought for sure he was going to.
Honestly, Conor McGregor, he's not the best fighter by any stretch, but he's my most favorite fighter to watch. I'm not a huge UFC fan, but if McGregor's on, I got to get to a TV to watch McGregor. Just something about McGregor.
There's a few guys like that are like, it doesn't matter who they are. You just show up and watch them. But there's a lot of guys right now that I would do that for.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This was a great episode.
Kyle, thanks for having me, buddy.
Absolutely. This has been
Until next time.
Until next time, I definitely want to have you on again.
All right, sounds good.
This has been KC Sports Talk, the podcast with Kyle Chambers.